Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we're doing a early impression video on a house that I am working my way through the sample set. And this was actually very kindly sent to me by the creator and owner, John Beeble. And this is the January Scent Project sample set. And today we're going to be talking about Smolderose. So there's the artwork up close. And I love these little artwork packages that come with the sample set because it gives you a good idea of the smell. Now, a couple things that I have to say before we get started. Number one, this was sent to me, this sample set by him. I did not buy this with my own money. However, as always, all opinions are my own. A sample set that I've paid, more on my lunch for than what this is worth is not going to influence me to say something good, bad, or indifferent about a fragrance. These opinions are all my own. And so I made that very clear before he sent the set. And obviously he said that's no problem at all. Say whatever you want with them. Don't say anything about them. Review them. Don't review them. Talk about them. Don't talk about them. And that's the way that I like these houses to kind of approach this. So I'm working through this rather diligently. Usually I take breaks and go back and forth between something like this that I'm working on, and then I'll come back to it. But I want to get through this because he did offer to actually come on the channel, and I would love to have him on, but I want to get to know his work first is the thing. And so we're going to work through these pretty quickly. Maybe we'll even do a live stream tonight or tomorrow where we knock out, 6 different January Scent Project samples so I can get to know a bunch of them at once. So I've been wearing Smolderose as my scent of the day. I've got about a 6.5 hour dry down right here on my left hand, and I just did a fresh spray on my right hand right here. So let's talk about it. And you can see I have worn this to bed once, so I have gotten to know the scent and given it a fair amount of wear, but this is still an early impression, so keep that in mind. Okay, so if you look at the picture, you will see that the picture enclosed appears to have a person lying down, and you can almost see a shadow of lipstick, okay? So the very first thing that popped into my head when I sprayed this, number one thing that popped into my head was lipstick and rose. And lipstick and rose, of course, reminded me of Frederic Malle's Lipstick Rose. Now, I'm blessed to have a vintage bottle of this. This is the very first release. That's why this bottle looks kind of weird with the writing and the alcohol content right there on the front. That's how the original Malle bottles used to look. This would have a matte cap if I had a cap, but I don't. So this is a Ralph Schwiga creation, and I am in love with this fragrance. And so the very first thing that popped into my head was lipstick and rose. And then you start to get, after that cosmetic rose kind of just announces itself, you start to get this citrus, which is basically bergamot. And the bergamot mixes with something green, a little bit green in the opening, but it's a little bit fleeting, that greenness. And if you take a look, it almost looks like on her wrist is a vine. But then if you look even closer, it looks like it's coming from her hair. And I'm just going to say that this looks like some sort of a vine. Because if you watched my Burvuvu review, you'll know I mentioned this vine-like walking through the forest, having a machete out or a chainsaw and cutting down vines and trees, hacking your way through the jungle and cutting that vine in half and kind of peering in the middle and seeing that green inside of the vine. And that is a connection that I initially thought when I saw this, when I just kind of gave this a quick glance. When I looked at it again and I realized that it looked like it was coming directly from hair, it doesn't make as much sense to me. But there is this, let's just say, slight nuance of this green, I'm not sure where it's coming from. Maybe it's the elderflower. I don't know elderflower enough other than I have had elderflower drinks, teas, and stuff like that, but that's my only real experience with elderflower. So again, the first fragrance that comes to mind is Frederic Malle's Lipstick Rose from 2000. I think it's from 2000 from Ralph Schwiga. I think this is one of the earliest releases from the brand of Frederic Malle. And it opens up slightly cosmetic-y and with this slight, I would say, fruity touch. There's almost this fruity aspect. I've heard some people say plummy. Maybe there's even a little bit of this violety heliotrope thing that you get to smell in fragrances like L'Eau d'Hiver. You know, if you smell kind of the combination of like heliotrope violet there's almost a little bit of that. I think Wafts from the Lofts mentioned there's this kind of, you know, Play-Doh-like aspect, and usually you get that from heliotrope. And there's no heliotrope listed here, but there is a little bit of that facet here, I'll say. But just a touch. Mostly for me, is this mixture of this cosmetic rose, and then the second star of the show appears, and that is this slightly animalic touch, which is basically in this fragrance a combination or a mixture of Choya Naka and Oud. And I believe I'm pronouncing that right, but if I'm not, I do apologize. My Texas accent betrays me from time to time. Choya Naka is basically this Indian creation going back thousands of years to them when they did their classic Indian attars. And it's a mixture of seashells. And so you can see roasted seashells, which sounds strange to a Westerner. But again, if you know the old Indian Attar fragrances, like Russian Atom did one that is based all around this Indian Attar making called the History of Attar Collection. This is one. Also, if you've actually smelled some real Attars, this is a beautiful Sultan Pasha Attar Senator Eddie sent my way in a haul that I got from him. And this is absolutely beautiful. I am not an Attar fan. I'm not versed in Attars, but my God, if this is the type of work that Sultan Pasha can do, I can't wait to smell some of his stuff. This is stunning. I've only worn it to bed a couple times, but this is the kind of thing I would wear. I mean, I would wear this, and I am the type of person that likes to spray. I have a ritual. I like my sprays. I like to spray my hands and under my shirt and stuff like that, my collarbones, because it's like part of a ritual. If I don't do my sprays throughout the day, I feel like I'm missing something. But I could easily wear, you know, something like this. The reason I bring it up is this Attar Middle Eastern theme with rose is what gives this fragrance weight to me. This is a very thick fragrance. I mentioned earlier maybe this hint of this powder, not powdery, but Play-Doh-y heliotrope, right? Imagine something with some serious mass, right? And saffron. And those combinations mixed with the rose give it a very, you could say Indian Attar leaning. You could say Middle Eastern Arabic leaning. I mean, imagine you're on a camel in the Middle East and it's so hot that, you know, any fragrance you put on just almost like slides off of your skin because it's so hot. You need something dense and heavy and thick, right? And that's kind of the style of this perfume to me because of the mixture of the oud and the choya naka, you know, the roasted seashells, if you will. And I think if you think of the oud and this seashell distillation, so basically what they do, I've done a little bit of research, and basically what they do is they roast the seashells in this vessel, and the vessel is called the choya. And so it basically produces this like mineralic, smoky, almost ocean-like smell. I mean, imagine seashells, right? And with a name like Smolderose, what do you think of? Like when you hear the name, if you know nothing about the fragrance, what comes to mind? Is this smoldering rose is kind of what I would expect, like a rose on the fire almost, right? It's smoldering. And I did watch an interview with John Biebel that he did where he said that these names are basically the merger or the blending of two different words. So these are not words like Burvuvu, some of these other names that I mentioned earlier that really threw me off when I was looking at them originally. You know, stuff like Vaporo Syndro, you know, stuff like that. And I was like, I've never heard of these before. Well, apparently what he's done is he's taken multiple words and just kind of lumped them together to be artistic, to be different. And that's why that's why the names seem a little bit strange. Smolderose fits though, and many people consider this. If you go watch the reviews, and there's not many, there's a handful. There's like 4 or 5 reviews on YouTube, and that's it. There's almost nothing about this fragrance. And so if you have that image in your head of this smoldering rose, do you have a sense of the fragrance? Does that give you a good sense of the fragrance? Well, I would say yes and no, because if you go back and you look at the picture, right, and look at the color and the shades. So down here, you get this green, almost mossy-like base, right? And so you get this mossy base. And if you take a look at the top, it almost looks like there's a city in the background. To me, this looks like maybe some old, ancient, big city that is maybe a little bit dingy, maybe a little bit dirty. Maybe some shady activity goes on in the hallways and, the darker alleys of the city, right? You don't want to go there at night kind of thing. You want to be in your house by night, right? A little bit dingy, a little bit dirty, but it's a big city in the background. And there are times when I smell this that I get this almost, interestingly enough, the reason I say yes, Smolderose is a name that encompasses the smell, but it also doesn't, because there are times when I smell this that I get this almost clean, pristine rose. Like if you've ever seen a Windows screensaver, right, for a computer, and sometimes they give you like this green rolling hills with clouds. It's like the greenest, most vibrant rolling hills you've ever seen, right? The sky is bright blue. The clouds are perfectly puffy. And then sometimes they'll give you kind of this screensaver that is like a beach. And the beach is the cleanest, crystal clear water. Like you can just see through it. Lovely background, right? The most pristine water you've ever seen. And that's kind of the dichotomy in this fragrance to me, because there's this back and forth between this clean, bright, fresh, almost going into that, full rose territory without being completely jammy, though. Yeah, this fragrance for me does not go into that cheaper, jammy type smell that you get from some rose fragrances. It stays away from that territory. But on the other hand, so you get that clean, bright, fresh, almost like cosmetic rose, right? But on the other hand, due to the oud and the smoke and the roasted seashells, you get this frankincense, smoky, mossy, slightly animalic, almost like this shape-shifting rose, right? So that's the dichotomy. On the one hand, I get a very, like if I just close my eyes, forget about the picture. I just close my eyes and smell this fragrance. Sometimes the rose comes across as extremely piercing and clean, almost like you're peering right into the heart and soul of the rose. But then, other times you smell it, and the Smolderose name is truer to life. You get that smoky, oudy, slightly mineralic, rose with the other facets in here are patchouli. And again, the patchouli adds a little bit of depth, but don't think about the patchouli in a big patchouli fragrance. This is not a chocolatey patchouli or anything like that. There is also Cade juniper listed in this fragrance, or what he lists as just Cade. And I'm thinking that the Cade, I don't know if it's Cade oil that gives it that smoky aspect, because Cade oil can be pretty smoky. If you've ever smelled the Cade in something like this, Portrayal Man, and look at the dent I put in this bottle in the last couple of years. There's a beautiful smoky Cade in here. And this is the kind of Cade that I think of when I smell it in Smolderose. Don't think about the fresher juniper aspect side of things. Juniper adds this sprightly freshness that you usually get in, like, you use it to almost decorate the gin. When people drink gin, they'll put the juniper in there as decoration, and it gives it this this sprightly bubbles bursting freshness feel. That's not the kind of juniper I get in here. I get more of the Cade, more of the smoky aspect side of it that closely resembles the Cade used in Amouage Portrayal Man. So if you watched my Burvuvu review, you will remember that I had mentioned that I started with Burvuvu when I could pick any fragrance out of the collection. That's the first one I started with because it had the note of castoreum. And castoreum is one of my favorite ingredients ever. I love animalic notes. I love animalic challenging castoreum. And if you remember, most people, when you go watch the reviews of Burvuvu, they go, yes, there's castoreum in there, but don't worry. You know, it's not too challenging. It's just kind of there. And meanwhile, I was saying the exact opposite. Man, I really wish he had turned that castoreum note up by about 10 times, right? And it was very elegantly used in the fact that I felt like you could wear Burvuvu out and about and, you know, not really truly offend anyone. It was a very wearable use of animalics to me. And the same technique is used here with this oud. Now, one thing we should pause and talk about is he actually lists agar. So he lists agar right here on the note listing. So agar wood. And, you know, the only big question that I have in my mind is what type of oud is used here? Because you would think if he was using real oud in the same sense that Dmitry Bortnikov or Ensar Oud or Russian Atom are using oud in Areej Dore, that this would be much more expensive than what it actually costs. I think January Scent Project Smolderose. Let's see how much this costs, just out of curiosity. Sorry, the January Scent Project is blocked on my computer. Okay, hang on, let's see. Smolderose, January Scent Project, $145 for, I think, 100 mil. And I think 30 mils is $65. 30 mils is $65. That's very fair. 100 mils for 145. That's not a bad price. It's actually a very fair price for an indie niche fragrance house like this. And so my question is, how can you use high quality agarwood oil at that price? My guess is it's probably some sort of an accord. I would have to ask him. That's a question that I would love to ask him if we ever get to do an interview. Outside of that, though, outside of that question as to what type of oud is used, is it real, is it an accord, is it, you know, those type of questions. Outside of that, and this is an eau de parfum concentration, by the way, you know, outside of that line of questioning, I would think about the way that the oud is used here in relation to the way the castoreum is used in Burvuvu. It's here. It adds, you know, some animalic elements to this. But it's used in an elegant way. It's dosed very carefully is the way that I would say. They're dosed in a way that makes this eminently wearable, I would say. You know, it's wearable perfume for the masses, but it would keep the interest of the addicts, you know, the perfume addicts like me that want something kind of different. You know, this is a rose that is very unique to me. There are some smoky aspects. There's fresh aspects. There's that piercing freshness I mentioned earlier. That charred, smoky, you know, smoldering aspect of the rose. There's a lot of different aspects at play here for the rose. And, you know, the way that I would describe the dichotomy, I was trying to think about a good image, because remember, this is not a first impression, but it's an early impression. This is the first time I've worn this as my scent of the day, and all I have is the sample, right? So this is kind of one of those, your opinions may change as you really get to know the scent more and more. But for me, the image that kind of came to my mind is the tide going in and coming out, let's say. And as the tide is in, you get this fresh, clean, cosmetic side of the rose. And as the tide is out, you are left with this mossy, earthy, smoldering, smoky, charred wood-like rose. And if you imagine that this right here is a beachfront and the ocean is kind of, the tide is going in and coming out, right? And as it goes in, you're hit with those fresher elements of the rose. And as it comes out, you're kind of left with the sludge of what's left behind from the tide whenever it kind of comes in. If you, obviously, if anyone's ever been to a beach of any kind and you have, you know, the tide coming in and washing all that sediment, right, up onto the beach, and then it pulls back and it leaves all of that there. You'll get kelp, you'll get seaweeds, you'll get the shells, you'll get, you know, the dirt. Sometimes dead fish will wash up on the shore, right? There's that dirty side of the ocean as well. And that's the way that I think about the dichotomy of this fragrance. On the one hand, when the water comes in and that mineralic freshness kind of comes, you're hit with the fresher parts of the rose. As the tide goes out, that's where it leaves kind of that grunge. Remember I mentioned the city being kind of grungy, a little bit dingy? Those are the words that I would use to describe the way that that background city feels. If this is actually a city, that's kind of what I imagine in my mind, that there's the smog of the city kind of in the background, right? And Wafts from the Lofts, they did a video on 3 January Scent Project fragrances, and this was one of them in that video. And in the video, they mentioned that there is this sourness that comes through. And I think they're spot on. There is definitely a sourness. Excuse me. I don't know where that sourness is truly coming from. Excuse me again. You know, it may be this briny, salty, earthy, air-like feel that this roasted seashells gives. And that may add this sour, bitter aspect a little bit. It may be the elderflower. I remember elderflower being a little bit bitter whenever you drink it. Like if you've had elderflower tea or something like that, it can be a little bit bitter. But they mentioned that this is an introverted rose, is what they said. And which I understand what they mean. However, I will take the other side of the argument and say that this could easily be kind of one of these look at me fragrances. You know, if you want to go out and make a splash, right? This is the kind of perfume that can kind of be all eyes on me because it's so different, especially if you're a man. If you're a man and you can pull this off, 99.9% of men out there will not smell like this. You will smell unique and different and interesting and intriguing and all that stuff. All of those words kind of come to mind if you've got the intestinal fortitude to wear this out and about as a guy. And rose fragrances are something that have, you know, really grown on me, obviously. I started out with a mini of this. This is Lyric Man. I just took a couple of my rose fragrances out. And I remember I gave it to my mother because I was like, I can't wear this. This is way too rosy. Like, I shouldn't be smelling like this. And I remember I gave it to my mother. And I was actually at my parents' house last weekend, and I saw she still has it, one of those Amouage minis that look exactly like the bottle, but shrunk into 7.5 mils or whatever it is. And then as the years went on, I remember my memory kept going back to it, like this fresh rose with the frankincense and the pine and the angelica and all of those different notes in there that just make it so unique. And I was like, I have to buy a bottle. I had to, and I'm very glad that I did. And so Lyric is one of my go-to rose fragrances. Another, if you want like a fresh rose, something like Rose de Taif, this is the Extrait, which is the one I would recommend that you go for if you can. It is a little bit more expensive, but the Extrait is beautiful. Lemony Taif Rose. Taif Rose has this unmistakable lemony, yellowy character. I love Taif Rose. However, my favorite rose of all time, I don't have a bottle of. I'm hunting a bottle of Malik Al Taif. It's just impossible to find. Russian Adams Malik Al Taif. I think that's probably my favorite rose. It's brilliantly done. That rose oud. The rose smells so high quality. It smells like you're a sultan, like you're a prince. I mean, literally is what it smells like to me. And Armando very kindly gave me a bottle of Calligraphy Rose, which is, I believe, discontinued. This was for the Middle Eastern market as well. These Aramis calligraphy lines were for the Middle Eastern market. And Calligraphy Rose was actually a 2013 release. It came out 10 years ago. It's discontinued. And it also had saffron, but they used Turkish Rose Absolute here. Whereas in Smolderose, they used Damask Rose, but also saffron and oud and frankincense. There's a lot of actually similar notes to Perfume Calligraphy Rose. Smolder Rose almost reminds me if you kind of blended these two together. Lipstick Rose and Aramis's Calligraphy Rose. There's more going on here. There's oregano and lavender and myrrh and styrax and labdanum and ambergris, but that ambergris in here actually plays a similar role to the roasted seashells in Smolderose. The ambergris plays a similar role because it gives it that salty, vibe. And this does the same thing with the roasted seashells, but it does it in a different way, and it makes it more unique. That ambergris accord, which, with Aramis, who knows? They're probably not using real ambergris. It's probably like an ambergris accord. It can be very expensive to use real ambergris, as you guys know. So, but, lots of people have smelled that salty ambroxan that many houses try to do nowadays. And I like it, but sometimes it can get a little bit repetitive, and this roasted seashell kind of does that mineralic, aquatic, briny, smoky thing, oceanic thing, but in a different way. And so I have to kind of give props to him for that. Now, the other side of the coin, the complaints from what I've heard, and I don't have any complaints about this. The complaints I've heard, though, is that some people say this can become a very linear fragrance. Like, what you start to smell an hour or two in is that's it. You're going to get that for 9 or 10 hours. It's not going to change. And there is some truth to that. It's not one of these big transition fragrances where, stage 1 is this, and stage 2 is this, and transition number 3 is this, and it does 3 completely different things, and you can, sit there and smell it and break down the transitions, and, the perfume nerd in you comes out. I think this is for the connoisseurs, maybe, but on the other hand, don't expect huge transitions. It's kind of one of those things where you get what you get. Now, luckily for me, I like this smell. I think this is an interesting rose fragrance. And does it drone on? I heard someone say it's very linear and it kind of drones on as the hours go by and they wish they could take it off. I haven't had that thought, or I haven't had that problem. But, I could see how having that big... So for me, when I think about the oud, the roasted seashells, that damask rose, the frankincense, the smoky aspects here, the saffron, which really makes it Middle Eastern. The saffron, when you take saffron and rose and oud, you're playing in Middle Eastern territory. And for me, Middle Eastern fragrances are meant to be big and bold. Remember, that Middle Eastern style is meant to project through the desert, through the intense heat of the desert, and, overpower everything around you. The horses, the camels, the all of that stuff. It's meant to really fight that heat. And this falls into that category in a way where the big projection of it, I don't mind. In fact, I like it. But if you have a problem with big performing fragrances, if you think that they are maybe a little bit less classy or less elegant or distasteful or something like that, which I don't. I love 80s and 70s and 80s fragrances that are huge. I love the Middle Eastern perfumes that are huge, so I don't have a problem with that. This doesn't smell like you're getting like that cheap amberwood Middle Eastern fragrance. No, it's not that, but it does have a big projection, a big bubble, and it lasts forever. So yes, I mean, I just thought I would mention that. I don't think it's something that I would dock points for. Not that I give points anyways, but I don't think it's something that I would take points away because of that. There is another rose fragrance that I've purchased recently. It's a rose patchouli, La Douleur Exquise, my favorite fragrance from last year, from 2022. This is, this is probably one of my favorite, if not my favorite, rose patchoulis. There's a beautiful rose in here. So the reason that I mention all this, and this also has smokiness as well, resins and smoke. The reason I mention all this is that John Biebel has a tall task ahead of him as far as I go, because if I had found this before I owned La Douleur Exquise and Lyric Man and, Aramis Calligraphy Rose and Rose de Taif, and, if I was going to add another rose fragrance to my collection right now, I would buy Malik Al Taif if I could find it. If I could find a partial or anything, that's the one I really want, because I think that's the one that would truly take my rose collection to the next level. That's the rose I've smelled that makes me go, I'll spend $600 on a bottle. I mean, I want that fragrance. It is so unbelievably good. This, I like it. But since I have this, I have Lipstick Rose and all the other ones I mentioned, I would probably take a pass on this. However, many people consider this to be his masterpiece, and I see why. You know, it's different. It's a rose, but it's done in a different way. It's hard to do a rose different. You know, a rose is a rose is a rose, right? And it's hard to add these maybe not challenging, but aspects that kind of make you go, or, oh, okay, I haven't smelled anything like that before. You know, something a little bit different. So I would love to hear his thoughts on Smolderose. I think it's his very first fragrance that he's ever done. If I'm not mistaken, I think this is the one that kind of launched the house. And I would love to hear what he has to say about the type of oud that was used here and stuff like that. So do let me know. That's kind of my take on Smolderose. It's a like, not a buy. Very similar to what I said about Burvuvu. It's a like, not a buy for me. But I've enjoyed getting to know these and wearing these as my scent of the day. They are beautiful wares. They're well done perfumery. So that is my thoughts. If you guys have experience with Smolderose, with the House of January scent project, I would love to hear your thoughts. Thanks everyone for watching. Do leave a like and a subscription and a comment and all the stuff you're supposed to do to help out the channel. We are growing pretty fast, and we've gotten a lot of new followers and subscribers, and I'm very excited about that. I think more and more eyes from the fragrance community are looking at people like me and Rich Mitch and, you know, Jonathan and people like that, you know, that we're doing it for the love of fragrance. We are, you know, and that's kind of our focus, is the perfume, the love, the art form. And this goes in this art in a bottle type fragrance is the thing about this. And that's why I say, if I had found this, because this came out in 2017, if I found this in 2017, this may have been a buy for me. But because I'm where I'm at right now in my collection, I have so many other rose fragrances that I would probably wear and use. And if you like that cosmetic aspect of the rose, I am in love with this. This was a shocker. I was not expecting to like this as much as I do. The cosmetic-y rose here is just, it's so enticing. It's so, at least for a man, like when I smell this, it's like smelling that cosmetic lipstick on every beautiful girl that you ever wanted to kiss, like when you had like a schoolgirl crush, you know. It's here. It's in this cosmetic. It's in this lipstick rose. And so because of my collection, I would probably take a pass on Smolderose, but this easily could have been a buy for me had I found it earlier in my journeys. So thanks everyone for watching. Appreciate the support. Cheers, and I hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.